hiding here in plain sight.
And right in front of me.
That was my theory in school. If you sat up front, the teacher couldn't see you, so you get called. Let us pray. Our Father God in heaven, we thank you for this beautiful day, for the blessings that you give us for our lives here in East Tennessee, in our homes, and this chance to be together with people of like mind. We worship you as the one who created all that is, seen and unseen. We ask that you bless our country, our state, bless our president, bless our state servants, especially Lowell Russell, who is here with us today. In all things, we give you thanks and know that you work all things for good. Watch over us, protect us, and give us strength. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good. Thank you, Seth.
And what's the next words they say at Yankee Stadium? After
Play
play
ball.
Play ball.
Play ball. Nobody knows that here.
They don't play ball here.
Well, as I said, at
Especially
Yankee
the
Stadium.
football team. I'm an Alabama fan, so I can say that. All right, we have a handful of announcements. The first most important one is, my first, is tomorrow's the chili cook-off and for the POA or TVRA, and I'm the reigning champion, and I'm gonna win again tomorrow. But the one y'all might wanna hear is next Wednesday. I won't be leading the meeting. That'll be. Thank you, Tim. Tough crowd. But next, Tim, I saw him.
Oh, you saw him?
No, next week's meeting, we're starting a half hour early. We're going back to 8:30, just for 1 week. 1 week, that's it. Because we have our next governor speaking, Monty Fritz, we hope. And Mark Pody, they're both coming, and they're both Tennessee legislators, so we should show up and tell them how to treat Lowell better. So that's next Wednesday. November 4th, one of my favorite events we do Cocktails with Conservatives. That's on November 4th. It's a Tuesday night, and it's at Hacienda Ayala, and it's just a fun place and good margaritas. But then on the 5th of November, 2 weeks from today, we have Richard Archie and John W. Paul from the Tennessee Firearms Association telling us about all the bad gun laws that our Republican governor is forcing on us. Then coming up, I'm going to make my announcement short. Casey James is coming to raise money for TP USA. And most of you were here for Lakey Derrick a couple of weeks ago. She's going to be here helping. We're raising money at the Turning Point, and that's a great cause. And Casey James really was entertaining. He was here for Hurricane Helene last year, and he's very, very good. And tickets are $35, and VIP tickets where you get the parking and get to meet him afterwards and all this other stuff, that's $100. So see Rick or Lori and or you can do it, buy it online, go to the website. Then while you're on the website, you can also buy Christmas Gala party tickets too. That's coming up December 19th. And back to Lakey Derrick. Well, she was great when she was here. She's coming back here on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. But she's gonna bring, because they're out of school, 2 different high school clubs are gonna come with her. So young people in Tellico Village, we kinda like that. And And that's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, so if you're home, if you haven't left town, come in for that one. And, that's it. I got a couple of announcements I gotta make. Rick Cringe is here, standing in the back, sitting in the back. He is president of the VFW of Tellico Village. And, coming up, we have, Veterans Day, November 11th.
Yeah.
And he's running something. You wanna tell them about it? They can hear you.
Yeah, just quick, Rick Reyes, I'm the commander of VFW Post. I've spoken a few times, met a lot of people here. November 11th, we always have our Veterans Day celebration, 4 to 6 in the Yacht Club. Lowell has agreed to be our guest speaker this year, so he's going to be there and grace us with his presence to do that, and here's great work. So just encourage everybody to come. It's a great time. We do a lot of really good things. We're going to have all the youth groups that we support doing some of the things during the ceremony, like the Civil Air Patrol and the Sea Cadets and stuff like that. So you can just go online to our webpage. It's TVVFW, Tellico Village, VFW.org, and just sign up. Well, the only reason we're having people sign up, it's free and everything, just so we know how many people are going to show up, so we don't get the fire marshal, crawling down our neck. And we usually get a pretty good crowd. So thanks everybody. Just come on down and we'll have a great time. Now we all go to dinner afterwards. Make your own reservations. It's a good time. So, and thanks all for coming and speaking this year, and we look forward to it.
Thank you, Rick. One other minor announcement is Carrie and Kim are looking for help stuffing mailboxes. So if you want to help them stuff mailboxes for the POA board, please see them afterwards.
Can I mention the areas that I haven't got
Sure.
assistance yet? Anybody here live in Kahiti? Gosh,
Where?
that's overwhelming.
There's a Tahitian.
Can I talk to you? Okay. Chota? Who lives in Chota? Come on, don't.
They don't want to volunteer.
There's no volunteer. There's only 566 mailboxes you have to visit. And then Coati.
There's a couple of them. Oh. And one in there.
Okay. Maybe we could team up, okay? But I got everything else covered. The Mercedes jumping in,
Okay.
Rosie's jumped in, Rhonda and John, Mike.
Okay, we're good.
David, hey, you gave me an opening, okay?
Yeah, he knows how to jump in both feet.
Oh, time's up.
Time's up. Okay, now I'm gonna introduce our speaker. I spent 5 hours with him yesterday, 4.5 maybe.
Sorry about that.
And,
Any new members?
oh, thank you. Are there any new members here? I didn't see any. I didn't write any down. Steve Abramowicz, he's from the Nashville area, and he writes for the Heartland Journal. He owns the Heartland Journal, and he does podcasts and writing. And I've been reading him basically through Tennessee Conservative News, and his articles are always interesting, and they're on so many different subjects that he's wealth of knowledge. And I found that out last night as we rode, and we're having these great conversations, and I think you'll have a great conversation he'll have a great conversation with us today. This is my new friend, Steve Abramowicz.
Thank you. Very nice. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. Nice to see you all out here. For those that don't know me, I'm the Latinx rapper Bad Bunny. You can look from the halftime symbol. Those who do know me, I'm Steve Abramowicz. I'm the host of the Heartland Journal podcast and the owner of the HeartlandJournal.com website. Every day, free newsletter in your inbox for free. Did I mention that? And it's the news that you're not going to get at night on CNN, Fox, unfortunately, MSNBC, or anywhere else. So we just try to cover that. Today is the 295th day of the year. Don't know if you know that. I know it because I listen to Bible in a Year every day since January 1st on podcasts, because I am just a podcast addict, I guess. And that's what got me into podcasting in the first place, is that I was out there pounding the streets in rainy Seattle, trying to figure out this crazy world that we were gonna be living in starting around 2000. and in the craziest place you can imagine, and listen to podcasts. And so that would be Charlie Kirk, that would be it's the last year of Rush Limbaugh's life, they started to put him on podcasts. I could listen to him. Tracy Beans, a long list of folks you probably never heard of, but you should have, because the news was unfiltered and accurate. Well, that was about the last bastion of that, because after Rush died, you all know, for some reason the news decided, oh, sorry, no, I should know better, shouldn't I? I live on a microphone in Zoom, I should know. Should I start over again? I'm Bad Bunny. By the way, have you noticed 295th day of the year, the government's closed? Did they tell you that? Did you notice that? The way I noticed, the only way it's affected me is I drove from Middle Tennessee to here last night to be with you in time. I'll be going back today, this morning, come out here. The unemployed skywriters, the skies are blue, there are no lines up there, no checkerboards. It's kind of weird, isn't it? So that's one of the things, it's a joke, but it's true, is that I have all these, by being a podcaster, there's conspiracy theories. Everything's, oh, you can't prove it, you don't have the answers. Well, yeah, that's why it's a conspiracy, it's hidden. You have to dig it out, you have to suss it out. The news won't do it. They're only doing what they're told to do, or they're reading what they're supposed to. And so when I started in podcasting, there was about, I'd say 100,000 of us. It reminds me of growing up in Napa, California. I was born in 71, graduated high school in 89, so I call myself a bookend. The best 2 decades of American history, in my opinion, because I was alive for them, 70s and 80s. Best music, best movies, best politics, believe it or not, and it's been downhill ever since. It's like the reverse of that evolutionary chart, if you've ever seen it, where you got the monkey and it goes, it's the opposite. It went from Nixon on down here. And that's, okay, I'm 5 minutes in, I haven't even looked at my notes yet, because the whole point is, why Tennessee? The same reason as you all want Tennessee. If you're born here, it's what you want to keep. If you moved here, it's supposed to be what you want to get to. That's not what happens, as you probably all know. So when my wife and I were figuring out what we were going to do, I'm born and raised in California in the 70s and 80s, moved to Washington State for the next 20 years of my life, got me to 50, and we saw with our own eyes how bad it can get. And the sad thing is, they keep saying, well, the next election will make it better, and it's like, no, it can always get worse. And it does if you live in the West Coast, where I call behind the Emerald Curtain, because the evergreen state is Washington, and they were the worst. They would have a competition between Oregon and Washington and California. Who could screw who the most first? That was before they got into the whole religious thing. They said, well, we're just gonna go after the party, then we're gonna go after the religions, and then we're gonna just tax everybody so they have to move, and they all end up living in Tellico Village, as you know, which didn't even exist, 20, 30 years ago. So that is exactly what we did, but it was a little harsher than that. Moved from California to start, to grow business, and it was great. First 10 years, fantastic. No taxes on your income versus California, San Francisco, where they were already trying to do this, didn't have to step over the homeless people, get to work in the Transamerica building. This is great. Raise a family, do that. But when you raise a family, you gotta put them in school. Homeschooling wasn't really a thing back then, and so my wife, born and raised Catholic schools her whole life, so we said, oh, that's probably a good thing. We worked out all right, so why don't we screw them over too? So I put them into Catholic school, and we got to see front row the indoctrination of the Marxist ideology that was going into the schools. And we didn't like it. And we kind of, was very eye-opening that we were one of the only parents that didn't like it. I took a back seat because I was born and raised in a Jewish family, ended up being born again in my 51st birthday. I'll end the story with that. But we, for some reason, we're standing outside of the group of other parents born at the same time as us, the bookends, and letting their children drink up this junk. That's all we could really say. It was like caffeine, or it was like a donut. artificial calories that give you a little perk and then you just crash. And they were crashing hard. I mean, they were medicated. They were so indoctrinated in the psychological, like the Woody Allen era of psychotherapy before pharmacotherapy. So once we started seeing that these kids were on, Ritalin and all these other SSRIs that are just come into existence out of Portland, Oregon, that this was a machine that was really doing this, we couldn't abide. We said, no, we just can't do it. And then my son got into a Catholic high school, which was actually named after my wife's grandfather, because he was an archbishop of the area. They wouldn't allow, well, let's put it this way. Quick story, somebody had wrote the N-word in the dust of a car, and it's not a lot of dust on cars in Seattle that park outside. It rains a lot, used to. So they did, and then the whole school had to shut down. They had to have this assembly. They brought in an American Indian to talk about racism, and we don't even know who did it. Like, it could have been somebody from 5 blocks away, not even related to the school. So they're just using it as an opportunity to do some more indoctrination. And so we went to the principal and asked, hey, why did we have to do this for the whole school when somebody that we don't know may be a racist? Maybe. He says, oh, I can't opine on that. My skin is white. I said, your skin is white? Huh, so you can't opine? Is that all of a sudden now that a principal of a school who's a white person can't say anything? So that's not good, can't have that. So we realized that that's out. So we ended up going to a Christian school. That's the happy ending of that one. But in the meantime, I happen to be on the board of the largest Jewish synagogue west of the Mississippi in Seattle. Very large group, 20 of us on the board. I was on the board. I can't tell you how many times there was 19-1 on something, and that one was me. And every time I thought, hey, you agree with this, right? No, I don't. The vote would be 19-1. I'm like, what? So we're gonna open bathrooms to boys or girls, even though Nordstrom's just reported in the Seattle Times, which lies all the time, about an attack in a girl's restroom on a young girl because some guy wore a dress that you probably put on out there in the women's department, not every day. But we're gonna do this, right? What part of Genesis 3 do you not understand, lady? And I mean it when I say lady, because they did this big, huge recruiting thing to replace the husband-wife rabbi with a woman rabbi who was a Marxist from Brooklyn. You can see the writing on the wall, it's pretty clear. So we had enough of that. So those two institutional religions were out. News, which I was a junkie for. You ever watch remember the Chris Matthews show Hardball? Yeah. It's a good crowd then, because a lot of times young people are like, no, who's Chris Matthews and what's a hardball? They play with softballs these days. They can't. No one can get struck out, except the Yankees. Da-dum-dum. All right. I'm a fan too, by the way. Judge is amazing. So, all that being said, institutional religion and press and media on the dark side. This isn't for the world, by the way. This is specifically in Seattle, and I watched it in California because Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein basically took over the San Jose Mercury News, the Sacramento Bee, the LA Times, in their quest to basically take over the entire state. And look what they did. They did it. Congratulations. Now they've got their nephew coming up who wants to be president and do it to the whole country. Hopefully we're all going to be prepared for that and not let it happen. But they have a way of making things happen. So along comes COVID. We all remember that. They're trying to make us forget, but we all remember that. And it was probably the worst place you could ever be in a situation like that, because it overnight went from a nice place, bucolic place, you could raise kids, you could raise family, you can put them in Catholic school, you can put them in Sunday school, you can train them to have their bar and bar mitzvahs, whatever, everything's fine, to North Korea. It really did. The governor there at the time, Inslee, he kept his emergency powers for 1,000 days, and they wanted to start letting girls, well, they would frame it as girls can use the men's restroom if they want to, which implies that the men can use the girls' bathroom if they want to, including at the summer swim leagues that were recreational. And this is how I got activated. Sometimes it chokes me up, sorry. You're getting early morning Steve, not 4:00 p.m. live TV show or podcast host Steve, so bear with me. And I ask questions for a living. I use the Socratic method. I don't usually do speeches, so anything you hear from me is not rehearsed or slick. It's just me. So COVID happens. We decide King County, which is misnamed because they have Martin Luther King on their logo to be virtue signaling, but it was actually named after Rutherford B. King, who died on election eve as the vice president in a gutter drunk. That's what it's really named of, and it's true colors. That is what Seattle is. Because if you go walk there now, from the airport to the hotel in downtown, you will see a lot of people emulating Rutherford B. King. So we were looking around, what are we gonna do with our kids that we want to have a better life? And I look back in hindsight now, and it's just amazing. 98% of King County, and no offense if you got vaccinated, I don't care, that's your business. I believe in the HIPAA laws. And I was just against the mandate. I was never against it. Because if you want to hit yourself with a hammer, go ahead. I'm not going to put you in jail for it. Don't do it, but that's your problem. It was the mandate. So when Trump got his boosters the other day or whatever, I'm like, whatever, he can do what he wants. I hope he lives a long life, but he can do what he wants. But the mandates in Seattle were unbelievable. You can't, I explained it to people in Tennessee, they're like, no, you can't. We were interviewing schools to put my daughter into, because she still had 2 years left of high school. They would look at us like, no, honey, that would never happen here. And we're like, I don't believe you, it's impossible. It was literally behind the Iron Curtain. It was a bubble. It was like being in Eastern Europe or Eastern Germany after World War II. And the news was, it was not filtering in. Everyone's watching CNN and they believe that, Trump was a Nazi and they're gonna kill you if you walk outside. So we were looking around for somewhere else. Oh, and by the way, those 1,000 days of emergency powers, long after any county even had a COVID victim in a hospital. He just kept it because that's the way he does. And they started jamming down all this Marxist stuff into the laws, which we said was gonna get worse. And in hindsight, it absolutely did. You can now run away from Tennessee, end up in Washington. They will pay for you on the bus to come and get gender transition surgery. They'll pay for it, taxpayers. And they didn't even know, they didn't even care. And they ran out of so much money, they just jacked them up another $9 billion with the new governor, who was the attorney general at the time, who allowed all this stuff, who has a daughter, and who literally sued Trump 99 times. And that's all he needed to do to say to run for election to become the next governor. The mayor's same thing, who's former US attorney for Obama, but happened to be a lesbian. That's fine, but it's not really something political that I would like. And that's why I like East Tennessee so much. I moved to West Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, we discovered Middle Tennessee. Sorry, folks in the back. We did our shopping, we looked all over the world. It happened to be the same time my son was looking for colleges. We started looking at the SEC schools. We looked at Baylor, we looked at LSU, we looked at Georgia, we looked at Auburn, we looked all over the place. And actually it turned out he goes to GCU in Arizona, but my daughter ended up at Auburn after Brentwood Academy in Middle Tennessee for her last 2 years. And what was special about that is that none of that stuff was happening, but we got to watch what did happen to all the ones who didn't think it was a good idea to leave. They say, oh, I'm into that, I can handle that. Those 19 people on the board who said not only are we gonna open up the bathrooms, but we're gonna go to the mosques for field trips, or we're going to rally everybody down to Olympia to march because we think Stacey Abrams is such an amazing woman that we're gonna, I mean, what does she have to do with Washington State? She's a Georgia, they're just insane people. Some great people, I should say, it's not all, but the ones that were activists and the ones that were grabbing the political power were a mess, to the extent that 15 years ago, I was covering Antifa when everyone was saying it was a myth. This week and last week, all of a sudden, Antifa became known as a domestic terrorist, and I've been saying this for 15 years. So one of my conspiracy theories has again come true, because they caused terrible, terrible havoc in Portland. People don't want to live there anymore. They run across the border to Washington State so that they can get away with it, but now it turns out the chief of police of Portland is in on it, as is the mayor. The mayor ran a race to replace Ted Wheeler, who was the mayor of Portland, who got tear gassed with Antifa in support, and her opponent was an Antifa member. So they didn't go for that, but they went for Tina Kopek is her name, and she literally is in cahoots with these folks, and it's all the NGOs and all the rest. So, all that to be said is, when I lived in LA, I knew Andrew Breitbart. One of the jobs I thought I was gonna have after I graduated was to go work with him at a place called the Huffington Post. Does anybody remember? Does anyone remember Ariana Huffington in real life?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So at the time, this was pretty cool. This was like I said, Hardball, I was a junkie. I loved that stuff. I even read his book. And one of the things about Hardball in that book, if you remember, is it says in the opening, in the intro, I told some senators that I was gonna do this. He used to be a writer for Carter. Was it Carter?
I thought it was Napoleon.
You're right, it was Napoleon, same time. But he said, I'm gonna tell you some of the inside baseball of what goes on in politics. And the answer was, why do you wanna do that? That's not a good, don't give away our secret. But he did, and I loved it, because it would actually give you discernment. It would give you the ability to say, oh, that's why you're doing this, and that's why you're doing that. Not because it's good for the people, or it's good policy, or because you're a Democrat or a Republican and that's in the platform. It's because you just want to trick everybody. You want to put the wool over their eyes. So I created heartlandjournal.com to basically say, no, not on my watch. If you think that, Governor Inslee's a good guy and needs 1,000 days of emergency powers because he's the right leader at the right time, no. If you think swim clubs should have boys in the same lane as girls as long as they're taking the puberty blockers at age 9 because science, no. But that's what they said. And so, same thing with Kevin. So I end up in Washington State. We move out of Seattle because it's crazy. I think I painted that picture pretty good. We go north to the next county called Snohomish. It's sort of like moving from Chattanooga to Tellico Village. And Tellico Village. And we're there about 2 years total, but in the very beginning it's COVID, and we're leaving for the same reasons I explained. And my daughter, she can't get a job. She's 15, but she did. She got a job delivering newspapers at what was called the Mill Creek View. Paper girl, it's pretty cool, but because she's only 15, I got a job too. I had to drive her from neighborhood to neighborhood so she could walk it and do that. But in the meantime, I got to know the founder and publisher. He's a 82nd Airborne alumni. He moved out from Michigan in '92, started this paper which became this hometown institution, and on the office glass door it said, I miss Reagan. So I'm like, that's my friend, that's my guy. So I'm gonna get to know him. So one paper too little, I have to go back and get one paper too many, give it back to recycle for the kids. And it was delivered by kids, door to door, old-fashioned hometown newspaper. It's fantastic, and it was relatively conservative. So he gets COVID, as we all did, and he goes into the hospital called Providence, and he didn't come out. Probably, and they wouldn't let his wife have visitation rights because that was against the rules. So I happen to be active with Republican politics, and I work with a bunch of groups, including what was even pre-Proud Boys, and I actually just had Gavin McGinnis on my show, who's the founder of the Proud Boys, and we got to talk about how the free breathers became the Proud Boys in the Pacific Northwest. Why were they called the free breathers? We would walk around in Snohomish just taking the masks off, people saying breathe, and you wouldn't believe the amount of cars that would honk and give you the finger and yell at you like, you're killing grandma. It's like, no, we're breathing. If you don't let grandma breathe, she will die. You're killing grandma. Anyway, so from the Breitbart sort of philosophy of, if you've probably heard this before, politics is downstream from culture. So I'm all about culture. I'm always looking at the culture and what are you trying to do? Because when Andrew died, another mentor who passed away, he coined that phrase and it was absolutely right, but he gave away the secret, kind of like Hardball. He told the left, we're on to your games. So what they did is they said, oh, okay, we'll be the culture, and then politics will follow us as well because we have both. That's where Nancy Pelosi came in. That's why she took over the media. That's why AOC has 1 million, maybe now 10 million followers on Twitter. She became the cultural phenomenon of the left that allowed everything that we're dealing with today. And it all started in California, Silicon Valley, and Microsoft, where I lived and breathed for all those many years. And so it also gave us the rise of the girl boss, right? You got these movies, this culture that says a 150-pound girl can do flip over her shoulder and some jujitsu on a 300-pound special forces guy, coming to kill her with automatic weapons. No problem. We got Tomb Raider, Angelina Jolie, and she'll save the day. I'm not a big fan of that either, but I love women. I think they're fantastic, but they can't do that. Okay, and so from Andrew, we got about 100 journalists, in my opinion. When he died, he kind of spawned 100 guys. We got Ben Shapiro, O'Keefe, if you know him, Charlie Kirk, me, in a small sense, we'll just leave it at that. Then when Rush died, I think we got about 1,000 that ended up on the radio, because AM radio was the bastion of right-wing conservative talk and thinking, more importantly, more so than DC, because those Republicans are terrible. And no offense if any of you were there. By the way, last night I drove all this way, we went and saw Monty Fritz, and you guys have Pody coming next week. He's been on the show. Monty's been on twice. Monty was kind enough to let me have the microphone and tell everybody hello out there, so he knew me. This is a 10-year town. I've been here 3 years, so I've gotten acknowledged by some people that really matter in this town, and that's fantastic. And it's because, unlike in a blue state where nobody could care what I'd say and they want to stop me from saying it, and the politics was, left on left arguing over the crazy stuff, out here we've got right on right politics. At least we're arguing about the right things, right? So this is the area that Barry Goldwater won when he ran. So this is about as conservative as get. So when we look back in hindsight, we chose Middle Tennessee. Probably should have chose Eastern Tennessee, because it reminds me quite a bit. It's that too, but for sure. But it reminds me quite a bit of when the percentages, of course, of the board I told you about that I was on, where it's just a super majority of crazy that you couldn't possibly vote your way or be heard your way, even if logic or science was prevailing. So the reason I wanted to mention Andrew Breitbart, and when Rush died, we got like Chris DeGaulle and Mark Levin on radio, and Dan Bongino and Nick Searcy, and the invention of the podcast, where Charlie Kirk had like over 1 million followers, And when I started, there's about 100,000 podcasts. There's 4.4 million as of last time they counted now. So it's really hard to get your voice out there compared to the old days if you're early. We just had our 400th episode anniversary Wednesday. So we do it, but it's not always gonna break out and beat, say, Fox or Wolf Blitzer if he wants to sit down with AOC and say something ridiculous, but they do it anyway. But no ads, at least with me, no ads. I always used to hate that. You go out on a run or a dog walk and you'd have to hit the fast forward 45 seconds for those commercials about how many pillows do you need, and do you really need more Patriot Supply in your closet? Well, and it's raining, so it's even worse, like, oh, there goes the phone, I can't listen to it anymore. So I wrote this article called Tickle the Algo. Gig said that he read it, and I appreciate that very much. Basically, it's where we've ended up in politics, right? So I kind of painted the picture. We had Andrew Breitbart, he was over here working for Arianna Huffington, who was a fraud. Her husband, he ran on family values as a Republican in California. It turns out he was gay, and it was a big lie. She sells her blog basically for $1 bazillion. Andrew dies. He spawns a bunch of conservatives that figure out a different way to tell you than in the LA Times or in the Wall Street Journal. And then we get radio, which we've always had. So for some of us who spend a lot of time in the car, a great opportunity to learn some things unfiltered. So I wrote this thing, Tickle the Algo, because this is the new world. We now live in the social media version of podcasts and radio 2.0, and which they want to get rid of, by the way. I don't know if you noticed this, but they want to get rid of AM because they know that's where their conservatives are. So let's just get rid of it and have Sirius Satellite. You can listen to Howard Stern all day. That's not good. So what I mean by Tickle the Algo, if you haven't read it, is that every day, podcasters like me, and I'll admit I have to do it too, they will go on to trends on Twitter or Blue Sky or any of these social media things and see what's trending, right? It's very democratic. What are the people talking about? Well, if they're talking about Israel, and they're talking about how evil Israel is, that doesn't stop them, even on the right, from talking about it that day on their show to tickle the algorithm, to get people to come and click on their news. They will make thousands, hundreds of thousands, and if you're a big influencer like a Candace Owens or a Tucker Carlson, millions of dollars by just saying, not what's on their mind, not what their soul tells them, not what the Bible told them they should say, whatever the heck they want, causing a lot of problems in the streets, in my humble opinion, especially globally on the Arab street, because they've decided that their paycheck from Qatar matters more to them than the Constitution of the United States. That's a problem, but that's new to that ecosystem, right? So all of us on the right, I'm assuming everyone here is on the right. If you're not, that's fine. There's leftist podcasts too, they're just not very good. We've all been corralled into that, not all of us, because some people have never heard a podcast before, and that's okay too, but a lot of them are influencers, which is the world's worst title for a talking head, because you're not supposed to influence, you're supposed to inform, or entertain, or educate. They don't. They tickle the algorithm. They get paid millions of dollars to say something that they may or may not truly believe and go down all kinds of rabbit holes, because you can make a month's worth of content out of it if you want to get paid. Now we have to have discernment. We have to look and say, are you the 19 on that board, or are you the one that is a conspiracy theorist but actually has 1,000% batting average for all the conspiracies that have come true, like skywriting? So, and you won't know until something dramatic happens, like the government shuts down and they don't pay the pilots to do it anymore, and oh, I live next to Fort Campbell, how ironic. So that is an important point that I just try to tell folks, is that when you're listening now on the news, whether it be Hannity, whether it be Laura Ingraham, whether it be Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens, you have to discern, why did they say that? Not, oh, I'm glad they said that. We used to just drink it up like hardball. Oh, this is facts and figures and science, and it's absolutely right. Well, post-COVID, that's not necessarily true. So you have to discern. You have to listen to 3 or 4 people to say, like, I agree with that more than that, but now I have to go look and follow the money and see why. Why did they say it? Why did they even make this an issue today? So after October 7th, 2 years ago, Israel gets attacked, murder, mayhem, rape, whatever, they take these hostages home. They could have ended the war immediately by just giving the hostages back. That was the main demand. They didn't, but all of a sudden the Western world, including college campuses, come out and say, oh, this is Luke Skywalker against the Death Star. This is the little guy against, the apartheid state or the genocide. It's a genocide. They just came out with the numbers yesterday. Less than 300 people starved, and all of it was from comorbidities, like already being dehydrated or suffering from whatever malnutrition, because Hamas wouldn't give the food to the people, not Israel was holding it back. So, we live on Earth. It's the domain of the Prince of Lies. We're going to be lied to, but you need to have discernment. And so that's why I say on my show, always an interesting person making a positive change in our community, and lovers of truth. They have to be somebody who I think is telling the truth. Do they lie to me? Yeah, all the time. That's what they do sometimes if they have an issue that they have to do. But I get a lot of charity people on, a lot of authors, a lot of doctors like Malone and McCullough, who have been provenly facted out that they told the truth, as opposed to the ones that sometimes provably lie. You can just literally say, like, wait a minute, here's the facts, you didn't say that. So that's important to me. Other things that are important, I've had influences like Gary Humble, I think, has been out here. Brandon Lewis is huge. He writes, I write a column every Friday. This last week I did a 3-part series, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which is rare. That was on the Muslim student unions in America and how they are basically the funders of this, including Columbia University, of all the things we saw on the streets this summer. Summer of Love 3.0, I think we're up to now. Matt Murphy is a talk show host in Middle Tennessee, 99.7 Super Talk. He's had me on, very supportive. He used to come on my show once a month. We had Murphy's Law, And with Brandon Lewis, who I think you all know, he used to come on regularly, and we did Let's Go Brandon. And those were great, but he got too busy and we can't do that as frequently as used to. And we changed the name. It used to be called the Mill Creek View because of Mill Creek, Washington, where I didn't even tell you that point. So Fred dies, I get called out to dinner. His widow and the guy named Vincent Cavallari, who is a deputy sheriff and a city council member of Mill Creek, say, we asked Fred what he wanted to do with the newspaper if something happened to him in the hospital, and he said, call Steve. And I said, why? I don't do this. I mean, I wrote a column for my college newspaper about bar crawling in Manhattan Beach, California on St. Patrick's Day, just so I could have a press pass and not have to wait in line. That's the only reason I did it. But I know a couple things about business, so okay, I'll get it up and running, back to its regular circulation, and then hopefully hand it off and sell it to somebody. That was 5 years ago. So I created the website, I created the newsletter, I created the podcast, and Vincent still writes for me on Mondays now at Heartland Journal, and he's still at the city council, and he is the one of, there's 7, always saying no to all the, you can't imagine what he has to deal with, because not only does he have to bust them in the daytime as a sheriff, then he has to go home to the city council meetings on a Tuesday, and there they are pleading for defund the police, which was invented there, pot shops on every corner, which was invented there, pharmaceutical drugs paid for by Medicare, that was, and he has to say no. But his cohorts, they will probably say yes. And of course, development, that's another story, I don't have time for that one. How am I on time?
10 minutes.
Left or?
No, we have 10 minutes, we need questions from you.
Yes, I do want to do this question. All right, so other things I cover in the newsletter are, like I said, things that you're not going to see on the news regularly. So we've had Senator Brent Taylor from Memphis. Nobody was talking about Memphis, now they all are. Michael Yaffe has a live show in Chattanooga, Talk Monster. I go on there every Wednesday at 12:30. I'll be doing that from the car today. Monty Fritz has been on, Jody Barrett, who lost the election for trying to be the next congressperson, so hopefully his replacement will beat Tennessee's AOC, which is basically what I've been saying all along, is don't California your Tennessee, don't Washington your Tennessee, just like Brandon. If Afton Ben wins that seat, they did it anyway without listening to me, and that's okay, but we'll have to fight through it. Gino Bolso's been on, Susan Lynn, she's been on in Nashville for 20 plus years, she's been on, Iron Lady, Janice Bowling's been on, Tim Burchett's been on, Marsha Blackburn's been on, lots of that. And it's all in the library, so you can just go to the website, heartlandjournal.com, go to journal or podcasts, they're all there. Glenn Jacobs, pretty much if they're making an impact, have been on the show, and I'm blessed that that's even happened, because like I said, it's a 10-year town, and I've only been here 3 years. Other things I wanted to mention for sure, so if you ever hear anyone say Rhino Radio, I'm gonna take credit for that. I coined that phrase because the media in Seattle is so liberal, so over the top with the Seattle Times. It's literally a rag. You wouldn't want to line your bird cage with it because your bird might end up being indoctrinated into liberalism just by being there. So when I got here, I'm like, oh great, conservatives, Republicans, red state, Governor Lee, it's all fantastic. It'll be like Nirvana for elephants. They are so liberal over there, man. I mean, they tried to get me to win the Nashville Scene Magazine Podcaster of the Year, and I guess I came in third, and so they did a #1 and then tied for 2, and they didn't tell anyone who the third was. That's how liberal you are. They won't even let their own listeners dictate who they want to do. And then lastly, I've been all over this thing. It's basically, I call it stolen sovereignty, judicial coups, court injunctions. Biden, he only had 14 in his 4 years, and we know that those 4 years were really just auto pen years. Clinton, 12 in his 8. Obama, 12 in his 8. George W. Bush, 6 in 8, which if you don't know what a court injunction is, it's like one judge saying the entire country has to abide by this one rule until it's appealed. The 9th, where I come from, is usually appealed. Trump's had 170 in 4 and 10 months, 4 years and 10 months. So, the judiciary has been just filled with leftists. They need to be impeached if they're corrupt, and there are plenty of that. That's a must going forward. So I cover that. And then data centers, I think, is my claim to fame. I go on radio and they said, nobody's ever talking about this. And I said, they should, and now they are. So we got Macon, Georgia, that they voted no unanimously in their county council on their second one. Google is gonna plant one right next door to Elon's XAI in Memphis, in West Memphis, Arkansas. Each one combined 10 million gallons a day of water. Phew, gone. So they're gonna tap the Spartan Aquifer at the bottom. I was one of the first people to talk about that. It's very important because farmers, I care very much about dynasties of people who have left estates behind. They're gonna lose it. And if they take all the water and they like to, for some reason, put these in drought-ridden spaces, we're gonna look like the surface of the moon. So I would like to live here for the rest of my life and not have to deal with a data center over there burning the ozone and blue light all night long. So, let's see, I think that probably covers it.
Okay, that's good.
That doesn't spark your interest in hearing what I have to say.
Dave, you mentioned the born again thing.
Yeah.
You want to end with that?
All right, sure. So I'm born again, thank God. I was as bad a sinner as you're ever gonna find, and then I found my wife, and everything changed immediately. But I was slow. I'm an only child, and so I'm kind of a slow learner, I guess you could say, even though I'm a tenacious learner. I want to get to the facts and figures of everything. But we had 2 kids, and my first was my son, and he found Jesus and was baptized before any of us and didn't tell us. And I found that kind of interesting because we put him in Catholic school, I told you that, Monday through Friday. I made sure he was in Sunday school, and my daughter too, to get their bar and bat mitzvahs when they became 13, and she's 2 years behind him, and they did it. And so we got to see that, and they both chose Christianity because she said, Dad, I want to be baptized. And this was, Liam really hadn't told us this, and I said, Frankie, I want to too. Let's do that. And so on my 51st birthday, February 2022, we went to a place called the House Church in Snohomish, Washington. This is the silver lining of all this behind the Iron Curtain stuff, is I found Jesus, Jesus found me. And we did. And it's ironic because
That's what I was gonna tell you, Sharam
Hadrian was one of the guests who had come to the house, and so hearing his former Muslim, born again story, and there were others too. There's one in Tennessee or in Nashville that his ministry is outside Planned Parenthoods, and he would pray outside Planned Parenthoods and save children from being aborted, and mothers obviously from the lifetime of pain and suffering for having done it. And he would come out there too, and guess what? There's no Planned Parenthood in Tennessee anymore. So those 2 guys literally, blew the world up. At least in our little town, and that's why when I hear Marsha Blackburn say she wants Tennessee values to emanate throughout the whole country, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly right, you're just not the right person to do it. I think that answers it. Oh, and so by the way, I say born again, but I'm really what I call a completed Jew, because I always say it when people say like, why do you believe in God? And I said, well, why don't you? What does he have to do? Write you a book? How about 2?
I didn't know that part of it. One of the things that was interesting in my reading is your story on TVA. And
oh yeah, TVA. All right, so there you go again with big government trying to do stuff. In Seattle, they were building, I don't know how else to call them, but camps where if you didn't get your COVID vax, they were gonna stick you in there. And folks kind of learned this. It was about 50 miles south, maybe 100 miles south of Seattle. And I knew, so I was telling everybody like, hey, is it that bad that if you don't take it, they gotta put you in jail with all the others who don't take it? And then what? Just give everybody COVID? Like, this doesn't make any sense. So when I got here, we got the same situation with this quasi-government, quasi-private, really high salary bureaucracy, and I'm all about that. At the teachers' unions, don't get me started in the administrations of why the kids are declining in learning and enrollment, but administrations have doubled, kind of like Tennessee's budget. So when I saw that TVA was trying to put a methane gas terminal in Cheatham County, I immediately was like, hey, John Rich, hey, Kid Rock, that's bad. So I had the gal on who was leading the No Take TVA to tell us the story, and then I had a guy who wrote the book, his name's Jared Sullivan, it's a great book, you should all read it, about the Kingsport spill, which is the country's largest natural disaster, or corporate disaster, by the way, and hopefully make a movie out of it, with the coal ash spill, and that was TVA.
Kingston, not Kingsport.
Kingsport, sorry, so I'm new, right? So, but I read the book, and I just didn't memorize that. So TVA has a history of caring more about, I don't know, the board, the CEO, than they do of providing cheap energy to the folks like FDR created it to do, which he did. It's a miracle, right? We wouldn't even have these lights on right now if it wasn't for TVA and FDR paying attention to the South and giving us the power. But like all power, it can be abused. And so when they wanted to move this planet, it would become uninhabitable. Just like I was saying about the data centers. If you put them in there and you move off the farmers, and the farmers don't grow the crops to feed the people, what's the data centers for? Just to tell you recipes on how to eat air. Really? So, yeah. So I did that, and it was one of the earlier ones, I think, and it worked. So we always love when there's an impact and when it happens. And so John Rich apparently called Brooke Rollins, and Brooke Rollins said to Donald Trump, hey, they're doing this, and he said, no, don't do that. And they didn't do it. So they'll find somewhere else. They might do it across the street here, but for right now, Cheatham County has been saved. And John Rich, he gets all the credit. He's from there, and he didn't want it, and he didn't get it.
All right, any other questions? Somebody?
Sir.
Yeah, but as you have your nose in the air, there's, of course, the talk about who might the next up-and-coming Democrats be that might be a little more moderate. I mean, even Cuomo in New York says it's not my party anymore. Is there anybody you see out there that after they lose the next presidential election that they might swing in that direction?
Well, that's a big question because I think they're crazy. Nancy Pelosi ran the Democratic Party with an iron fist for 45 years, and I'm 55, so my whole life. Right from where I lived, I literally met the woman in DC when I was in high school, and she was anti-China, but that was on the surface, right? Behind the scenes, she made all kinds of deals. She'd go to Taiwan and trade stocks with her husband. So what happened is she's now a backbencher because she's old and pretty drunk. Yeah, I just said it. And she has given over the reins to the C team. These are the minor leaguers. I mean, Hakeem Jeffries, even Chuck Schumer, AOC, Jasmine Crockett, these loudmouths that say all the right 1950s and 60s Democratic stuff, but with F-bombs, are not gonna be ready for prime time to take over the country and rule. So I have a feeling the Democrats are just going to be a mess for quite a while because they don't have their FDR, they don't have their Obama, they don't have a leader. And even Obama's been kind of discredited. So when you see somebody like an Afton Bain, who doesn't live in District 7, but she's running, she's gonna have all the money in the world. She's going to make a race out of it, but I still believe that in that area, Middle Tennessee, Williamson County, where I live, she's not gonna sell, so it's not gonna work. So that's not happening. And the same thing's happening, you know, Steve Cohen, who's been there since dinosaurs roamed the earth, in Memphis, he's gonna be challenged by Justin Pearson, the young gentleman with the big hair. That's their next generation of Democrats. That is not something that I believe that you can get 51% of the country to vote for, especially since we saw the numbers for Trump. Like, that's Kamala Harris, just in different geographic locations. So that's not gonna work. So what I do see happening is I see Democrats and Republicans merging. This happened with the Tea Party. This happened to Breitbart.com after Andrew died. This happened to a lot of, well, maybe Tucker Carlson to this day, was yet to be seen. they co-opt the ideology, triangulation, remember from Clinton and Dick Morris, who was like this legendary pollster really, who basically ran the White House. So we're gonna see a lot of Republicans running in R plus 5, 6, 7 districts that are really Democrats. So we call them rhinos now, but they're worse than that. And what I fear is that because of Trump and his 8 years, really 12 if you look at it, he not only created Trump derangement syndrome in the news and on the left, and that's why Joy Reid doesn't have a job anymore. It's what Brandon Lewis calls Trump complacent syndrome, where we all think, oh, Trump's back, everything's gonna be great, it's gonna be fantastic, we don't have to worry about it, all our problems are solved, inflation's gone, wars in the Middle East are gone, it's nirvana, it's heaven on earth, right? Kingdom has come. I don't believe that for a second, because inside the Republican Party is where you can see the merger, the melding of both parties that really just want power and money, like always. It's age old, go back to Judges or Kings in the Bible. They just want to make sure that they have their future laid out for their politics with the easiest road to hoe and not have to go out and raise a lot of money every day. So that's why a Monty Fritz is so important versus a bottomless money pit of Marsha Blackburn, because we don't really know how she would govern. She's just been a senator for a long time, and they just do this. They don't lead. So, and he's been a fighter up there in Nashville, but he doesn't have the money. So, long way of saying to you, I think the Democrats are going to be leaderless for a long time, but they don't need a leader, because I just wrote an article about, does the Senate want a Politburo? The Senate really wants the Republicans to fold and get rid of the filibuster to open up the government again. That's why they voted 12 times against it, and they need 6 Democrats or else they can't do it anyway. So it's really them holding them out. But once the filibuster is gone, then they're just like the Congress, and you've got a Politburo. So they can do anything they want with majority rule if they're in the majority, and everyone else who's saying like, wait, Constitution, wait, judges, wait, Trump, wait, MAGA, too bad, suckers, it's your chance. So that's what I fear, that's what I see, which is why we really need to buck the trend of history and not have the out-of-party or the in-power party lose in the midterms. We need more Republicans, but I just had a pollster or a lobbyist on, a pretty big one in DC. He's not optimistic about that. So the red states are the answer to that question. We need red states like Tennessee, like Alabama, like Wyoming, Florida, to bolster the rights of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights while we're in power, because like every time we're going to get our next Democratic controlled Congress, right? So it's just, we have to be the bulwark in the states and let the DC do what DC does, which is waste money and say stupid things.
Okay.
Ma'am.
What's the future of Vice President Vance?
The future of Vice President Vance, if I had my say, is president in 2048, or 38, whatever it is, 28. Today Wednesday? Yeah. So yeah, no, he's the MAGA movement. He has very big donor ties. You know, how many Republicans have had movies made about their lives ahead of time before they were even in the national scene? So he's really got that culture that we were talking about. And now they're gonna do everything they can to knock that down. And you can also tell that he's the biggest threat because people are on TV talking about him now. We didn't even hear who Mike Pence was until it's, late into the term of Trump. So he's the Democrats' worst nightmare too. He's very big with big tech, so he's got the money. He's very big with the culture, so he's good, and he's a really good talker on his feet, and he's kind of got that Trump trolling ability, which is great. So I think his future is very bright. I'd like to see that. To be honest with you, between Rubio and J.D. Vance, I don't care which, as long as they're both in the government doing good work.
Rick, you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, in your opinion, what do you think? Why is the American Jewish population so liberal?
Great question, great question. So I actually know this. I actually looked into this, believe it or not. The Jewish population in America is so liberal because a guy named Harry S. Truman bucked the trend at the time. He would not be allowed in the Democratic Party today. He'd probably be assassinated. Hypothetically, he opened up the borders. He opened up America to the deportation camps in Europe after World War II when the whole world said, let him die. And I know this because if it wasn't for that, I would not be here to this day. My father was in one of those deportation camps, and his mother, who escaped the Russians or Germans and was born in a Russian refugee camp, ended up in a deportation camp. My grandfather was lost in the, well, I guess the Eastern Front, because he was shanghaied to fight for the Russians against the Germans and was lost, never to be seen again. And she married a guy named Oscar Tannen. They moved to California, and there's a street in Napa where I'm born called Tannen Street, and that's where my father grew up. And so if it wasn't for Truman, that never would happen. And so for some reason, people in their 80s and 90s, the Democratic Party and Truman and FDR are gods to them, more so than the real gods. And that's the problem, right? So, because when they say that government is your God, you're wrong, right? There's only one God. And you certainly are not going to be open to Jesus, which has helped me to get to this point. So my answer to that question is always, it's tradition, it's a undying love for Truman, but the Democratic Party, the sinister party, not the people so much, but the party, used that as a monolithic voting bloc to always get what they want, right? That's why they defended Clinton, even though he was misogynist, and that's why they defended Obama, even though he was, I don't know, racist, let's say. Whatever thing you didn't like about them.
Anti-Jew, that's for sure.
Certainly anti-Israel. And then Netanyahu is the other reason for that. He's the Eisenhower / Republican of, and Winston Churchill rolled into one, of Israel. And so just by him being the target of their minds, he's a Republican in name only, right? And what we would say here. So the Jews say, Truman, Democrats, good, always. Republican, anything, from Nixon to Reagan to Bush to Trump, of course, bad. And they always vote like that. Now, Trump has made more headway because his daughter and his grandkids are Jewish, and he's been very friendly to the Israeli state, and he backed them. But even Nixon had his issues, right? So, long story short, the answer is, I believe they just can't get past Truman was their savior, and therefore the Democratic Party is not as mean as
being Jewish, I'm gonna say the same thing. It is Truman. Truman recognized the state of Israel. No other country in the world did. And that's my background. It's that. FDR, not so much, because he didn't let them come in. That he knew what was happening in the concentration camps, and he didn't stop it. He didn't try to.
Right.
And Truman was not even, he didn't know what was going on in the world. He was just that seat filler.
The other thing I'd say is, in terms of culture, America has allowed Jewish people to work in the cultural business, whether it be TV, movies, own newspapers, all the rest. I wish I could say Fred Philbrook was Jewish, but he was a liberator. He fought in World War II. And so the ability to stay relevant, unlike, say, Germany, that doesn't have comedy because they kicked them all out. That's a joke. The American experience for Jews has been better than ever before, and they credit Truman and FDR's and LBJ's Great Society and all of these other liberal policies, progressives. So it's the Bolsheviks against the Mensheviks.
Can I say one quick
One
thing?
more.
So like you were talking about the Jews, but even like now, like the typical Black Americans are now, that would vote Democratic, are now, a lot of them are seeing the light about, getting off the plantation thinking of the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll see the light as well.
Exactly right. One of the problems, of course, Trump was very pro prison reform, and so a lot of the folks who had been there for a long time, maybe unfairly, little crimes.
DNA and all that.
Yeah, a lot of that. They trust him more. Plus, he was a cultural figure before he became president, so he wasn't like a wonky guy. Like they used to say, Bill Clinton was the first Black president. I think Maya Angelou, of all people, said that. Well, Trump's been way more favorable to their cause than even he was, especially in hindsight. Like, did he use them or did he help them? Trump seems to have been helping them, not using them.
Democrats have used Black people.
Yeah, and I think he got, if I'm not mistaken, he got a record turnout versus Romney, McCain for sure, and whoever white folk, Bush before him. So I mean, I'll just end by telling you this. So there's a guy named Steve Gill. You probably all know from Tennessee. Okay, so he wrote a column recently, actually Tuesday, so this week, and I'll just end with what he ended with. At some point, rational Democrats in Tennessee may realize that all of the sound and fury from these far-left self-promoters have left them in a perpetual political wasteland. That's what I was telling you. No prospects in statewide races, super minority status in the House and Senate with no real beachhead to fight back to political relevance, relegated to governing a few high-crime, economically challenged, and poor-performing urban centers in the state begging for scraps and relevance. Can they build back some degree of political power or at least influence? Possibly, but not as long as the only voices Tennessee voters hear from Democrats are the screaming nails on chalkboards provided by the attention-grabbing but result-deficient community activists who outshout whatever voices of reason might remain. And that's why you want to listen to the heartlandjournal.com, because we get voices of reason.
All right, Rick's gonna just close it. What does Rick always say at the end?
Romans 8:31, if God is for us,
Born for such a time as now, Esther 3.
thank you.
Oh, I brought hats and stickers, and if you're into music, I got guitar picks. If that interests you, happy to divvy them out.
What was your name? You never told me.